So Montreal is beautiful. First of all, there's some incredible architecture. It has a lot of very old historic buildings. If you've seen Ghostbusters, the building that the Marshmallow Man climbs up, that's there. You'll see that. Riding the bus around town. A lot of films are filmed there. It's a lot of Hollywood films are actually filmed in Montreal. And so sometimes you'll see, areas blocked off for filming or whatever, and that's kind of fun to be in that environment. I mean, it has a very metropolitan feel. There's people from all over the world there on business, on travel, or just living there. There's several universities, so a lot of student areas. They have a couple different English universities, a French university. It's really cold. That's for certain. It gets, I think on some days it was like -40, which is where it doesn't matter if you're talking Fahrenheit or Celsius. They do use Celsius, there, by the way, in the metric measurements. So, when you're driving, it's kilometers per hour. You have to get used to that. 60 kilometers per hour sounds pretty fast, but it's not. So you got to watch your speed. And French and English are the main languages in Montreal, and mostly French outside of Montreal within Quebec. But maybe a third of the people you hear speaking are speaking something else. They'll be speaking Russian or an Eastern language or Spanish is very common as well. So most people live in apartments in Montreal. There's a lot of apartments. There's also some beautiful homes in some areas as well. There's a beautiful park. Mount Royal Park or Montreal Park was designed by the same guy who did Central Park in New York, and it just has beautiful paths and a pond that they turn into an ice skating rink during the winter, and they have sleigh rides, and it's just very kind of magical during the winter. The fall is gorgeous. The maple leaves all change, and speaking of maple leaves, their hockey teams are very well supported by fans, and it's very difficult to schedule an appointment during a hockey game or to try and track. But unless you want to watch the game with someone, they'll let you in. Crime really didn't seem to be. I never felt like fear being in Montreal, and we'd be out till 9:30 or 10 at night sometimes with our appointments. There is an area called the Red Zone, which we never went to because it was the Red Zone, and it's mostly an old part of the city that has a lot of bars and things, and really people don't live there. It's just a kind of a commercial district, and so apparently there's maybe some crime going on down there that there was a good reason, I'm sure, that they told us to stay away, a few blocks of the city. But for the most part, it's very easy to get around and very safe. Most of the time we're in the subway. Oh, this is a really exciting part of Montreal. So they have the metro system, they call it. So you ride in these subway. They have 4 main lines to get all over the city, as well as some street buses if you need to get around. But they have underground malls, basically. Like, you can access a lot of the city, all of downtown, from underground, just walking through tunnels and taking the subway. And some people, they have their apartment has access to underground. They don't have to go out in the winter when it's -40 degrees. They can just go underground. They can get to their grocery store, to the mall, to work, to the bank, everywhere they need to go, just underground. That's pretty cool. So we really didn't tracked, go door to door looking for people outside, because nobody's outside during the winter. So you meet people just in the tunnels down underground. You meet people on the subway. It's actually really cool. It's a really fun place. You get lost at first because you don't know where you're going, but just pick up a map and you can orient yourself pretty well, or ask people where to go. People are really friendly. So they do have a different currency. They have the Canadian dollar. I don't know what it is now. At the time, it was advantageous to us. We got more. I think we got $1.30 in Canadian money for $1 US. So things seemed to be a little cheaper. We went to Wendy's and you get a $1 burger, and it really is costing you like 75 cents or something. But I mean, as far as being able to access things, a lot of the shops and the restaurants, you wouldn't know if you were in the US or Canada, except for the French menus. But I mean, all the fast food chains and some of the restaurant chains and the grocery stores have different names, but you can get all the products you need. You can get your peanut butter and jelly. You can, whatever you need. if anything, they just have more variety because of such a diverse population, a culturally diverse population. Something outside of Montreal, I guess, that is easier to find. You can maple syrup. They have even in Montreal they have, it's called a sugar shack or cabane à sucre, and basically during the maple syrup season, so the early spring when the maple trees are letting their syrup out, you go to these places and whatever you order on the menu, usually it's a breakfast type thing, but it could be anything, and they bring out a pitcher of hot maple syrup and you just pour it on your food, and maybe not the healthiest, but it tastes really good. So in the city of Montreal, there were, I think, 3 or 4 buildings, and I think now they may have double that. They have a couple new ones. And then in the suburbs of Montreal as well, there are several church buildings, and some of them are unique. Some, like the one I went to when I was in downtown Montreal, was like a 4-level building that had been converted to a church. And so when you're on the inside, it has kind of the same wallpaper and chair rail that a lot of the LDS churches have in Utah or somewhere in the U.S. But they also have. There was also an elevator. Classrooms were on different levels. The bishop's offices were on like the top level, and the chapel was in the basement, like a big open room down there. It's easy to get to a church building too. They're all near the metro stations, or in some of the smaller towns they have a very small meeting house where they just have a chapel and a few classrooms for a branch. But in Montreal, yeah, churches, it feels like anywhere in the U.S.
As far as like generally, I think culture between like Vancouver City and at least what I was used to here in the States, it's pretty similar. Both are very driven. We want to be successful. We want to do our best. To be frank, make money, do well in our professions and everything. I think that's common between both. One thing I feel like I noticed as far as culture goes is maybe Vancouver's like a little more lax. There's a lot, and sometimes members would think differently, but at least us as missionaries felt like there's at least like one holiday a month, so I don't know what they would say to that, but I definitely noticed that. People are very friendly, or I thought in Canada, they talk to us a lot. One thing though, as far as like religion goes, people weren't as open to the idea as they might be here in the States. And maybe that's just from like the difference of founding. We're a country built on the idea of like one nation under God. And a lot of people that I met in Canada didn't really like have that same background. So here you might hear like celebrities that never go to church or anything like that say like, oh, I'm grateful that God led me here, or God's given me this career. I don't think you hear that as much up in Canada. I don't know why exactly that is. That's just one of the things that I did notice as far as culture goes. In Vancouver City, traffic is unreal sometimes, and so most people try to get by just taking public transit. The bus system is very, very good. If we ever wanted more people to teach, and I served in a YSA that covered 2 states. It was a huge YSA, and we knew all the YSA people didn't drive to school. We knew that they took the bus, so we would sometimes just buy bus tickets for a day, hop on the bus, and just talk to people at public transit, and it was so busy. It was a lot of fun. So I think people do that to avoid the traffic, to be honest, because if I lived in Vancouver, I wouldn't want to deal with some of the traffic I got stuck in every day because it was unreal. Food is delicious. I loved eating. One of my favorite foods is sushi. So anyone who loves sushi here in the States doesn't even know what real or good sushi tastes like until they go to Vancouver, because it's unreal how delicious it is. I'll have to admit, I spent a lot of money eating sushi. If I ever needed if we ever ate out, I could get 3 rolls of sushi for $8. And if I went to go to a fast food and get a burger combo, it would cost the same thing. So in my mind, I would just rationalize that of course I'm going to go eat sushi instead of eat out at McDonald's, So I really enjoyed that. I just spoke to some people that are from my mission. We talked for a while 2 weeks ago, and she actually mentioned to me that the Canadian dollar and the US dollar right now are pretty much the same. So I don't think there's a very big difference. At living though, like living expenses are way higher in Vancouver. Their minimum wage, mind you, is also significantly higher. I think it's like 11 or 12 bucks compared to here, which is like 7.50. So there's a difference there. I think everything, cost of living is fairly expensive. Some of the apartments that we lived in weren't very nice, but they were still close to like $1,000 a month. So that is one thing to know. Everything is more expensive. Even like milk is something that I gave up on my mission because it was just too expensive and I didn't want to buy it every week. Flip that, fish though, like if I wanted to get like a fillet of salmon, like a nice big one, I could get 2 for $7. So I learned how to eat fish on my mission, and I know how to cook salmon, I think fairly well. But other things that I was used to growing up with, I didn't eat as much of, or I didn't buy as much because it was more expensive. Ooh, crime and safety, that's a funny one. There's like, don't get me wrong, so I mean, you're gonna find crime anywhere you go. So I could specifically think of one city, and all my mission companions and anyone watching this that served in my mission will know exactly what city I'm talking about. That was pretty sketchy. But other than that, honestly, like, I don't remember hearing a lot of crime things about my mission. A funny note, I remember serving in Victoria the 5 months I was there. Obviously, we're not watching CNN or the news or anything like that. I mean, any news we would hear would just be from members or like the front page of the paper sitting on someone's doorstep. And I think the most like preposterous or outrageous news story I heard the whole time I was in Victoria was like a city council debate on whether or not a certain road in Victoria should have a sidewalk or not. So that's kind of a stark contrast between where I'm from and where I grew up. There is a lot of crime where I'm from in California, and a lot of like murders and things like that. So typically when you watch the news, you hear at least like 1 or 2 things about that. But up there, again, I never watched the news, but if this front page paper that was everywhere for a few months is any indicator, then I think Vancouver is a fairly safe place, and missionaries going there probably don't need to worry very much about their physical safety. And I think that's a blessing. I think mothers would appreciate that a lot. You know, I know my mom did, so that was a good thing for her. Businesses and stuff, I don't know a whole lot. I know there are a lot of members there who were like retired CEOs of companies or running their own like businesses of different sorts. I noticed one thing is that as like media arts was really popular in Vancouver. A lot of businesses would help other companies create like advertisements or web design or things like that. A lot of people get into that. I think that's offered at some of the schools in British Columbia. So fairly easy for people to get into that and then make a living off of it. So I saw that a lot. As far as everything else, I think is pretty much the same as what we experience here.
Well, when I first received my mission call to Canada, the first thing that I thought of in my mind was igloos and dog sleds and things like that. And although it is very cold sometimes, I didn't see any igloos and I didn't see any dog sleds. If you were to see the city from an airplane or even walking through certain parts of the city, it would look similar to New York or Chicago or Philadelphia, just a big city in a Western culture similar to ours. When you start to talk to the people and see the diversity there, things change pretty quickly. But it looks like a city just like ours. There were times when I was in downtown when I would ride the subway to church every week. We would get metro passes that would allow us on the buses and on the metros, and we would contact and find and teach lessons and even pray with people in those locations sometimes, which made for some pretty interesting stories, meeting some great people. The housing is different depending on what part of the province you're in. If you're in Toronto, you'll typically live in a high-rise building in an apartment. Some of them are old, and some of them are newer and a little bit nicer. If you're outside of the city, you'll typically live in a basement apartment or maybe a shorter, smaller apartment building like I typically did through my mission. Despite Toronto being so big, it's actually a pretty safe city. It's, if I understand correctly, it's the second safest city in Canada behind Vancouver of the big cities, and Canada's crime rate is far, far below any city in the United States. It's a real safe place. Many missionaries will go through their entire mission without feeling in danger or threatened even once. So that's a nice snippet for all those moms out there to know that their missionaries are typically going to be pretty safe while they're there. Toronto's a pretty liberal place. Lots of people that have different views on same-sex marriage, and even the way that they think about politics being liberal affects their attitude towards certain things, even in the gospel. It's a very artsy place. I wasn't into this while I was there, but there's lots of small museums for history or for art, or I've heard the music scene is really good there, things like that.